technologies that have changed the way we live, we work, we eat, we sleep, we...
Hey, when was the last time you went to the cinema? I remember the last time I went to the cinema was in December 2022 to see Avatar Part 2. The reality is almost all of us are watching something on YouTube today. There are 49 crore Indians who each consume 29 hours worth of YouTube content. There are 32 crore Indians scrolling reels each month. India has 5 crore Netflix subscribers who cumulatively watch 300 crore hours worth of content every year. I want you to think very carefully about what I'm going to say now. The honest reality is that the internet has taken the world from mainstream to niches. Cinema is mainstream, and as niches take over, with each one of us having our own content preferences, the key question here is, if the internet is killing mainstream, does this mean that India's rupees 12,000 crore per annum cinema industry is under attack? That is what we're going to cover today on Breakdown in 3 parts. In the first part, we'll cover the history of India's cinema industry. In part 2, we'll do a diagnosis of what is happening today in the Indian cinema industry. What is the impact of OTT? And we'll do a deep dive into the financials of PVR Inox. And finally, in part 3, we'll look at the future of the Indian cinema industry. Welcome to Breakdown. Let's get right into it. The Breakdown YouTube channel is part of the Zerodha network, which provides us with the resources, information, tools, and insights to make this high-quality business journalism available to you. With this, back to Breakdown. For us to understand the history of the Indian cinema industry, we have to break it into 4 distinct parts. The first part is the independence era for Indian cinema. Now, we had just become a free nation, and therefore a lot of the themes of Indian cinema were around patriotism, anti-colonialism, and people rising up against foreign masters. And in this era, the first superstar that emerged was Ashok Kumar with Kismat, and Bimal Roy, who a lot of you may not know, was the most famous producer and director in that era. In the words of my grandfather, who was about 15 years then, this is the golden age of Bollywood. This is the era where the concept of the filmy hero emerged, with Dilip Kumar, Raj Kapoor, Dev Anand. And in this era where music started to become very important along with dance, the late Srimati Lata Mangeshkar started to emerge as a national icon. This is also the era where there was the Cold War between the USSR, the Soviet Union, and the United States of America. And very interestingly, this is the era where Bollywood actually became a channel for diplomacy between India and the USSR. Raj Kapoor was actually invited to the USSR and felicitated for his role in movies. And they even went so far as to describe him as the Charlie Chaplin of the East. We also for the first time started to win some international acclaim for our cinematography. So at the Cannes 1956, India won its first global award, and this went to Satyajit Ray for the movie Panthar Panchali. We also received our first Oscar nomination in 1957 for Mother India, and we were nominated for the Best Foreign Film. And then the big moment for Bollywood emerged, which is on 5th August 1960. Mughal-e-Azam was released. It dominated the box office for 15 years. And you'd be amazed to know that Mughal-e-Azam took 16 years to make. And this is the time period where Mr. Kaun Banega Crorepati, Amitabh Bachchan, became India's first true superstar because of a string of hits like Diwar Sholay, Dawn, and Coolie. And this is also the time period where Bollywood was on the rise, but so were the regional cinema industries like Tollywood on the same rise. And in this era of change came liberalization, where the Indian economy opened up. In June 1991, in the Vasant Vihar area of Delhi, a cinema was opened with the name of Priya Cinema, named after Priya Jaisinghani. This was PVR, Priya Village Roadshow. And why did PVR have this weird name? It was a joint venture between Priya Exhibitors and Village Roadshows. Village Roadshows was an Australia-based multinational which was focused on the entertainment industry. And in 2003, ICICI Ventures invested 40 crore rupees into PVR to take over the stake of Village Roadshow. This takes us to the 2000s. Aamir Khan emerged as a crossover superstar with Lagan, Rang De Basanti and Tare Zameen Par. The big moment for us, at the peak of the global financial crisis in 2008, India had one bright spot, which was Slumdog Millionaire. It got nominated at the Oscars and won 8 awards in 2008. This is also the era where people were making shit tons of money in the cinema industry because you, I and others were going to the cinema. Bheja Fry took 15 days to record, cost 80 lakh rupees and grossed 12 crore rupees in the box office. Because of this, multiplexes started to crop up all over urban India. And going to the cinema became more than just the cinema. It became a signaling, social and status activity. The rest of 2015 to 2020 was majorly stable until COVID hit. And that was a nail in the coffin for the Indian cinema industry. By the end of COVID, consolidation had already taken off in a major way, and we were left with 3 major multiplex operators: PVR INOX, Cinepolis, and Carnival. And this brings us to today, 2025. The headline takeaway from Ormax Media's report is that there is barely any growth in the Indian cinema industry in the last 10 years. And when you look at the numbers, you will see that the box office collections had grown very steadily from 8,300 crore in 2015 to 11,000 crore in 2019. And today, we're just about touching 12,000 crore. And therefore, a lot of people in the Indian cinema industry describe the COVID era as the lost era for the Indian cinema industry. The next interesting takeaway from Ormax Media is that while there is a lot of buzz around regional cinema, Bollywood continues to dominate. In 2015, Bollywood accounted for 45% of the total box office collections, which was then followed by Telugu films with 14%. This trend more or less held for all of the years until when COVID hit. And in this period, the box office collections of Bollywood only contributed to 27% of the total. This is the period where Telugu took over with 29% of box office share. This is exactly the time period where people decided to write off Bollywood, saying the era of Hindi cinema is over, regional cinema is on a rise. But that is not really what ended up happening. When we look at the most recent data, Pathaan did 650 crore, Jawan did 750 crore, and Tiger 3 did 300 crore. Bollywood accounts for a 40% share of box office collections, followed by Telugu at 20%. Now, my anecdote might sound like an isolated data point, but Ormax Media doubles down on this fact and shows why the cinema industry is in trouble, because the cinema industry is a footfall business, which is people showing up at the cinema, and that footfall is on a decline. What does the data tell us? The peak occupancy in the Indian cinema industry would have been around 2019, where 34% of all seats would have been filled. Today, in 2025, that figure is lesser than 25%. And what this literally means is in the last 10 years, our population has increased a lot, our spending power has increased a lot, but our interest in cinema has actually declined. The harsh reality is that footfall in the cinema is dependent on the media IP that is being played in the cinema. Now, just to double down to make sure this point hits home, the cinema business is a real estate business. Real estate is location, location, location. But there is a nuance here. It is location along with occupancy. If your occupancy is not high, a cinema is not going to make money. And we'll now walk you through the mathematics of why this is the case. You might think that PVR is a cinema company, but PVR is not actually a cinema business. PVR is a food and advertising business. Now, I'm saying this, let's look at the financials to understand why PVR is a food and advertising business. Let's start with the food income of PVR. In 2025, the average spending per head on food and beverage was about 134 rupees. This was about 70 rupees back in 2015. When we look at the average ticket price at PVR, it is today at about 250 rupees. Previously in 2015, it was about 150 to 180 rupees. The margin that PVR makes from food and beverage is almost 75%, which is much higher than the margin that PVR is making on the ticket price. That margin is about 50%. So for the most recent financial year, PVR's revenue from operations was about 5,780 crore. 3,500 crore of this revenue came from tickets, about 1,800 crore rupees came from food and beverage, and 450 crore rupees came from advertising. And this is why I tell people PVR is as much a food and advertising company as it is a media business. I think they've done an extremely commendable job trying to execute despite all of the headwinds that exist in their industries. Their cash position has improved significantly, which means they're showing operating efficiency, they're cutting costs aggressively, and they are also shutting down non-performing cinemas. In Sitare Zameen Par, Aamir Khan decided to not launch the movie on OTT despite having a reported 120 crore rupee offer from Amazon Prime Video. Instead, he decided to go launch this in cinemas, and it collected 90 crore rupees in the first week in the box office collections. And literally today, while we are recording this breakdown, it is available on YouTube in a pay-per-view format. So very clearly, there is something about cinema which is pushing the smarter operators like Aamir Khan to continue doubling down on cinema as a form factor. Ajay Bijli, that founder of PVR and the chairman today of PVR Inox, had one very interesting quote about this. He said that while there is negativity associated with the impact of OTTs on the multiplex industry, we are focused on experience that cannot be replicated at home. Enjoying food while watching movie in a cinema is a very different experience from sitting on your sofa. And if you were to ask me, I think he has a point here. Now, Mr. Ajay Bijli also added saying that I have seen customers come only to eat the food and leave the cinema without watching the movie. And he is alluding to the fact that perhaps the problem in the cinema industry is not the price, not the location, not the experience. It is the content issue. We know that the core of the media industry is content. Content is driven by IP. So let's say you are able to get exclusive IP for your cinema. This drives footfalls because it's the only place they can watch this content. The footfalls, as we've seen with the financials of PVR, allow you to monetize by selling ads and selling food and beverage. Exclusives is the new battleground in content and for the media and cinema industry. And this push of OTTs to license and own exclusive content was the start of the landslide for the Indian cinema industry from about 2015 onwards. So in 2016, Amazon Prime Video in India began to launch exclusive content. In 2018, Netflix launched India Originals, and by 2019, Disney Hotstar started focusing on exclusives. So during COVID, the OTT players in India really ramped up their content budget. So Amazon Prime Studio acquired Shersha from Dharma Productions. Netflix in India commissioned Betal with Red Chillies Entertainment. Now, high quality, exclusive, cinema grade content was bypassing the cinema and going straight to the OTT platforms, and that was the nail in the coffin during COVID for the Indian cinema industry. It is at this point that the concept of movie date night became Netflix and chill. Cinema is really taking off in small town India, and a lot of the previous generation of celebrities have turned entrepreneurs to take advantage of this theme. At the Waves 2025 summit in May, Shah Rukh Khan said something very interesting. I still believe that the call of the day is India needs a lot more theatres, simpler theatres, cheaper theatres in small towns and cities so that we can showcase Indian films in whichever language to a larger majority of the Indian population at a cheaper rate. So while SRK said this in 2025, almost 7 years prior to this, Ajay Devgan was already all in on cinema in small town India. In the last couple of years, he has invested over 600 crore rupees into NY Ventures LLP, which is his cinema venture focused on small town India. It has 47 screens across UP, which include towns like Ghazipur, Rai Bareli. And by the way, Ajay Devgan is not alone with NY Ventures LLP. There are at least 3 other well-funded, small-town focused cinema businesses out there. This is Wave, Complex, and Maxus Cinemas. The key question to ask here is that if the Indian cinema industry is on this reported decline, why does India need more cinemas? And the answer to this comes from the PVR Inox financials. According to them, India has about 8 screens per 10 lakh individuals versus about 125 screens per 10 lakh individuals in the US. We have 10,000 screens in India versus 40,000 screens in USA, 90,000 screens in China. And because of our lower per capita income versus China and the USA, the opportunity lies in creating smaller, more affordable cinema units. So the average cost for this chotu cinema, according to Complex's CEO, is about 1.5 to 2 crore versus about 8 to 10 crore for a national multiplex. By the way, an average cost of a cinema for PVR Inox is somewhere in the 20 crore range. And obviously, to account for this, the average ticket price at these chotu cinemas is about 100 rupees as compared to the average ticket price at PVR Inox, which is upwards of 250 rupees. Now, the reason why these chotu cinemas work is that in Tier 2 India, the model completely flips. In Tier 1 India, the cinema operator has to pay high fees to place the cinema next to a shopping complex. In Tier 2 India, the cinema operator is able to partner with the real estate developer or the mall owner to co-build the cinema, which drives down the cost of building the cinema. So the cost upfront is lower, there is a lower capex on the facility, and because of this, the payback period is much shorter as compared to the multiplex format that PVR Inox and its peers are running today. Where do we go with cinemas in the metropolitan cities? And the answer is towards experiential cinema. PVR Inox today operates 80 plus insignia screens, 10 to 15 director cut screens, 35 IMAX screens. The lowest price at any of these is somewhere at about 500 rupees, and when you actually go to insignia, it starts at about 1500 rupees. But there are enough people in metropolitan cities who are willing to pay this almost 6x premium because they seek experiences in life versus just consumption. And these large format cinemas are also useful for PVR Inox to double up as centers for corporate events, for influencer meet and greets, and also to run lectures. For example, post-COVID, a number of well-known edtech companies were beginning their offline push by inviting celebrity teachers to do a guest lecture in a PVR Inox theater. Let me tell you what we're very worried about here at Breakdown. Our concern is that the Indian cinema industry, and in fact the global cinema industry, will go down the route of performing arts, which was plays with costumes in a fancy theater. It almost feels like cinema in metro cities today have some ingredients of performing arts. It's a premium experience, it is infrequent, and you go there for the experience, not just because it is fun or interesting or a good outing for your children. It is clear that OTT, COVID, and exclusive content has changed India's cinema industry forever. We don't think that there is a going back. And the reason for this is that content has moved from cinema to OTT, experience has moved from cinema to concerts. And we'd love to hear from you. When was the last time you went to a cinema hall? Do you think that India's cinema industry has a future? Do let us know in the comment section. That's all from us on India's cinema industry. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.